5 days after the recorder was discovered, the Mercer case was officially reopened. Not publicly at first, no press conference, no dramatic announcement, just a quiet reassignment inside the county sheriff's office. Detective Laura Haynes, who had been a patrol officer back in 2011, requested the file herself. She remembered standing outside the Mercer home the day it was processed, watching reporters gather at the edge of the lawn. She remembered thinking it didn't feel like a runaway case. It felt unfinished. The recorder changed everything. Audio specialists enhanced the whisper again. She knows. 3 syllables. Calm. Not rushed, not panicked. The voice didn't sound like someone breaking in. It sounded like someone already inside. Investigators returned to the Mercer home with new owners' permission. They focused on entry points that wouldn't leave obvious damage. Attic access, crawl spaces, shared utility lines. That's when they discovered something disturbing. The Mercer house and the neighboring property shared an old, sealed-off service corridor dating back to original construction in the 1980s. It had supposedly been closed during renovations years earlier. It hadn't been. Behind a false panel in the neighbor's basement, investigators found a narrow passage just wide enough for a person to move through. Dust patterns suggested it had been used, not frequently, but not decades ago either. Inside that corridor, they found fibers consistent with clothing manufactured within the last 15 years. No fingerprints, no DNA profile strong enough to code us, but enough to confirm one thing. Someone had access. Someone could move between the houses without ever stepping outside. The neighbor who lived there in 2011 was a man named Richard Halpern, 52 at the time of the disappearance, divorced, lived alone, worked night shifts as a security systems technician for a regional alarm company. He had never been considered a suspect. He had also moved out 3 months after the Mercer family vanished. Halpern claimed he relocated for work. Records showed he transferred to a branch office in another state. Nothing criminal in his background. No arrests, no restraining orders. Clean. But when detectives reviewed his employment files, they found something interesting. In March of 2011, Halpern had serviced a home security consultation request on Briar Street. The address line was incomplete in the archived paperwork. The house number was smudged in the scan, but the street name was correct, and the appointment had been marked Client Declined Installation. There was no record of payment, no follow-up. When investigators tracked Halpern down in 2018, he was living in a small town in northern Arizona. He agreed to an interview. Calm, cooperative, mildly confused about why anyone was still asking about the Mercers after so many years. He denied ever entering their home, denied installing equipment, denied making calls. When asked about the shared corridor, he seemed genuinely surprised, claimed he had no idea it existed. Then Detective Haynes asked him a simple question. "Did you ever speak to Allison Mercer?" Halpern paused, not long, but long enough. He said no. Phone records from 2011 told a slightly different story. While the blocked calls to the Mercer home couldn't be directly traced, tower data placed Halpern's cell phone in his residence during every single one of those late-night call windows. That alone wasn't proof. He lived next door. Of course his phone would ping there. But then forensic account. No one in Briar Hollow ever imagined their town would become the center of a national mystery. It was the kind of place real estate agents described as quiet and safe. Tree-lined streets, one high school, Friday night football. The kind of town where people didn't lock their doors until something gave them a reason to. That reason came in April of 2011. On the morning of April 12th, Linda Carver noticed something unusual. She lived across the street from the Mercer family, David, his wife Allison, and their 8-year-old son, Caleb. Every weekday at 7:45 a.m., Allison backed her silver Honda out of the driveway to take Caleb to school. 10 minutes later, David left for work in his truck. It was a routine so consistent you could set your watch to it. But that morning, Both cars were still in the driveway at 8:15. By 9:30, Linda felt uneasy enough to call Allison's phone. It went straight to voicemail. At 11:07 a.m., she contacted the sheriff's office. Deputy Mark Ellison arrived shortly after and immediately sensed something wasn't right. The front door was slightly open, not wide, just enough to suggest someone had left in a hurry or hadn't meant to leave at all. Inside, the house looked paused in time. The television was on, quietly playing a children's cartoon. A bowl of cereal sat on the coffee table, milk beginning to sour. A half-finished cup of coffee rested on the kitchen counter. Caleb's backpack lay near the stairs. David's briefcase was on a chair. Allison's purse hung by the door. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no blood, no struggle. But on the kitchen island, written directly on the granite in black marker, were 4 words: "We had to leave." Handwriting analysis later confirmed it matched Allison's, but investigators noted something strange. The word "had" was pressed harder into the surface than the others, as if the writer hesitated there, as if it mattered. The family's phones were found inside the house, powered off. Their passports were still in a desk drawer. Closets were full, luggage untouched. Bank accounts showed no unusual withdrawals. It didn't look like a family preparing to start over. It looked like a family interrupted. Digital forensics uncovered one unsettling detail. 3 nights before the disappearance, David Mercer searched the same phrase repeatedly between 1:13 a.m. and 1:47 a.m. He never clicked on a result. He just searched it again and again. Neighbors later reported seeing a dark SUV parked down the street the night before the family vanished. Engine off, lights off, just sitting there. By morning, it was gone. No plate, no driver description, no traffic camera footage. Weeks turned into months. Tips poured in, but none were confirmed. No verified sightings, no financial activity, no trace. Years later, a private investigator re-examined the case and found something law enforcement had overlooked. In the month leading up to their disappearance, the Mercer home phone had received 27 calls from a blocked number. Each call lasted less than 10 seconds. All occurred between 2 and 3 a.m. When enhanced, the audio revealed faint breathing beneath static. No words, just slow, steady breathing. The calls stopped the night before the family vanished. A former co-worker of David later remembered an odd comment he'd made at lunch 2 weeks prior. David had asked, almost jokingly, if anyone ever felt like someone had been inside their house while they were gone. Small things had been moved, he said. A chair slightly out of place, a cabinet open, a light on that shouldn't have been. At the time, it sounded like stress. In hindsight, it sounded like fear. In 2018, during renovations at a neighboring property, contractors discovered a small digital recorder hidden in a crawl space between the 2 homes. Most of the files were corrupted, but one recording dated April 11, 2011 was intact. It lasted 43 seconds. At first, there was silence, then the faint creak of a door, a male whisper, "She knows," footsteps, then a child's voice, "Dad?" The recording ended there. Voice comparison was inconclusive. No fingerprints were recovered from the device. To this day, no bodies have been found. No one has been charged. No confirmed evidence proves the Mercer family left town, and no evidence proves they were taken. The house still stands in Briar Hollow. New owners, fresh renovations. The original countertop is long gone. But the question remains. Who were those 4 words really for? Because sometimes the most disturbing cases aren't the ones with violence you can see. They're the ones where a family disappears quietly, leaving behind a message that sounds less like a decision and more like surrender.